There are people who walk into a room and immediately sense that something isn't right. Nothing obvious has happened. Everyone is smiling. The conversation sounds perfectly normal. Yet somehow, they can feel the tension hiding underneath. A smile looks just a little too forced. Someone's confidence feels strangely rehearsed. A simple compliment somehow doesn't sound sincere. And before they even know why, they already feel that something is off. Most people admire this ability. They call it intuition. They call it emotional intelligence. Some even believe it's a gift. But psychology paints a very different picture. Because the people who notice the most are often the people who feel the most exhausted. Not from overthinking, but from carrying information that most minds never even register. If this sounds familiar, you've probably experienced something frustrating. You notice patterns that later turn out to be true. You sense when someone isn't being genuine. You recognize tension long before anyone else does. Yet when you mention it, people tell you you're imagining things. You're too sensitive. You're reading too much into it. It's all in your head. Eventually, you stop explaining yourself. Not because you've stopped noticing, because you've realized that most people simply don't see what you see. Here's what many people don't realize. This ability has very little to do with magic or supernatural intuition. Your brain is simply collecting more information than most people consciously process. Imagine two people watching the exact same conversation. One hears only the words. The other notices the hesitation before the answer, the change in breathing, the smile that disappears too quickly, the eyes that don't match the emotion in the voice. None of these signals mean much on their own, but your brain doesn't examine them one at a time. It connects them together almost instantly. That's why some people don't just hear conversations. They feel them. And that's where the real burden begins. Because once your brain learns to recognize hidden patterns, it doesn't know how to stop. Every interaction becomes another puzzle. Every relationship becomes another pattern. Slowly, you stop seeing people the way they present themselves. You start seeing the emotions they're trying to hide. Behind confidence, you notice insecurity. Behind anger, you recognize fear. Behind constant kindness, you sometimes discover someone who's terrified of being rejected. It sounds like a powerful ability. In many ways, it is. But it also creates a psychological trap that most highly perceptive people never expect. The clearer you become at reading people, the less understood you often feel yourself. And that leads to the first trap, becoming the accidental villain. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because seeing the truth isn't always the same as being welcomed for telling it. The first trap doesn't begin with other people. It begins inside your own mind. At first, being highly perceptive feels empowering. Your instincts are often right. The person who seemed too good to be true eventually disappoints everyone. The friend who insisted they were fine suddenly admits they've been struggling for months. The relationship you quietly worried about falls apart exactly the way you expected. After enough experiences like these, something subtle changes. You stop treating your intuition as a helpful guide. You begin treating it as undeniable truth. And that's when perception quietly turns into hypervigilance. Here's what psychology has discovered. The human brain isn't designed to simply collect information. It's designed to protect you. Once it believes a certain pattern keeps you safe, it starts looking for that pattern everywhere. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. If your brain expects hidden motives, it notices every suspicious detail. If it expects rejection, every delayed reply suddenly feels significant. If it expects betrayal, even small changes in someone's behavior begin to feel like warning signs. The strange part is that you're no longer observing people objectively. You're observing them through the lens of what your brain is trying to prevent. Without realizing it, every conversation becomes an investigation. Someone replies with fewer words than usual. Your mind immediately asks, Are they upset? A coworker doesn't smile the way they normally do. Did I do something wrong? Someone takes hours to respond to a message. They're losing interest. Most of the time, none of those conclusions are certain. But your brain hates uncertainty. It would rather create an explanation than admit it doesn't have one. Ironically, the more intelligent your pattern recognition becomes, the harder it is to simply let things be. You stop listening to what people actually say. You start listening to every pause, every glance, every tiny inconsistency. You're no longer experiencing the conversation. You're analyzing it while it's happening. And analysis has a hidden cost. You can't fully connect with someone if part of your mind is constantly evaluating them. Eventually, something else begins to happen. You become incredibly good at understanding everyone around you. You notice who's overwhelmed before they admit it. You recognize who's pretending to be confident. You can almost feel when someone is carrying emotional pain they haven't spoken about. People sense that they're safe around you, so they open up. Friends come to you for advice. Coworkers trust you with their problems. Even strangers sometimes tell you things they've never told anyone else. It sounds rewarding, but over time, it becomes incredibly lonely. Because while everyone feels understood by you, very few people stop to understand you. They assume you're the strong one, the calm one, the person who always has the answers. No one notices that the one carrying everyone else's emotions is quietly becoming exhausted. This is one of the greatest paradoxes of highly perceptive people. The better you become at reading others, the easier it becomes for others to overlook you. You become the observer in everyone else's story, but rarely the person anyone truly sees. So, if seeing more creates more anxiety, if understanding people creates more loneliness, does that mean ignorance is actually the happier way to live? Psychology's answer is surprisingly simple. No. The solution isn't to see less. It's to stop believing that every truth you discover belongs on your shoulders. And that changes everything. So, how do you escape a mind that never stops noticing? The answer isn't becoming less observant. It isn't forcing yourself to ignore what you see. And it certainly isn't pretending your intuition doesn't exist. The real solution is learning the difference between awareness and responsibility, because those are not the same thing. One of the biggest mistakes highly perceptive people make is believing that every insight demands a response. You notice someone manipulating a conversation. You feel a friend's hidden sadness. You recognize that a relationship is quietly falling apart. Your instinct is to fix it, to warn someone, to carry the emotional weight before anyone else even realizes it's there. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Not every problem is yours to solve. Not every truth needs to be spoken. And not every person is ready to hear what you've already seen. Psychologists often talk about emotional boundaries. Most people think boundaries mean keeping others away. In reality, healthy boundaries protect you from carrying emotions that were never yours to begin with. You can understand someone's pain without absorbing it. You can recognize someone's insecurity without making it your responsibility to heal them. You can see through someone's mask without feeling the need to tear it off. That single shift changes everything. Because perception is a gift, but emotional over-responsibility is a burden. There's another realization that many highly perceptive people eventually discover. People don't wear masks because they're always dishonest. More often, they wear them because they're afraid. Afraid of rejection. Afraid of disappointing the people they love. Afraid that if someone saw the parts of themselves they're trying to hide, they wouldn't be accepted anymore. Once you understand that, your perspective begins to soften. Instead of constantly asking, "What are they hiding from me?" you begin asking, "What are they protecting inside themselves?" That question doesn't make you naive. It makes you compassionate. And compassion is very different from suspicion. Finally, there's one lesson that almost every highly perceptive person has to learn the hard way. You cannot think your way into certainty. Many people spend years believing that if they analyze enough details, they'll never be disappointed again. If they read every signal correctly, if they predict every outcome, if they stay one step ahead, then nothing will ever catch them by surprise. But life doesn't work that way. No amount of awareness can eliminate uncertainty. Some people will still leave. Some relationships will still change. Some fears will come true. And many of the things you worried about will never happen at all. Real peace doesn't come from predicting the future. It comes from trusting yourself to handle whatever the future brings. That's the difference between intelligence and wisdom. Intelligence notices patterns. Wisdom knows which patterns deserve attention. Intelligence asks endless questions. Wisdom accepts that not every question needs an immediate answer. Intelligence keeps searching for certainty. Wisdom learns to live without it. Maybe that's why the people who appear the calmest aren't the ones who see the least. They're the ones who no longer feel responsible for carrying everything they see. So, if you've always felt different, if you've spent years wondering why you notice things other people completely miss, maybe you were never the problem. Maybe your mind simply learned to pay attention in ways that others never had to. The challenge isn't learning to see less. It's learning when to let go. I'm curious. Which of these psychological traps has quietly shaped your life the most? Tell me in the comments. And if this video helped you understand yourself in a way you never have before, subscribe to Mind Decoded and share it with someone who has always felt like they're seeing a different version of the world than everyone else. Because sometimes, the greatest peace doesn't come from discovering another hidden truth. It comes from finally realizing that not every truth is yours to carry.